Thank you, Andrew. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, let me begin with a story, a small story, but a real story. Only a few days ago, I asked my finance minister, Yorgos Papakostandinu, how deep our recession seemed to be this year. He said, I can't tell you until our independent Greek statistics authority announces the figures. I replied, okay, but surely you have an initial indication from them. He said, no, I don't. I said, well, ask them. He said, I have asked them. So I said, what was the result? He said, they have decided that no one, not God himself, will get a preview on the statistics before they are officially and publicly released. Not even finance ministers. And so it was. We awaited for the 2011 first quarter figures on our economy, as did everyone else. And we received the results on Friday at the same time as everyone else in the world did. Yes, we have an independent statistics authority in Greece. Some might say, so what? Isn't that supposed to be self-evident? Yes, but it represents a sea change in our country. Actually, we may be front-runners compared to many other countries, even in the developed world. But that is why I call what we are doing in this country the revolution of the self-evident. It may sound easy, but in fact it is painful. Last year, our 2009 deficit was revised from 6% of GDP to 15.4% of GDP. That is painful. Transparency is painful. But it is a necessary prerequisite to know where we are today, to begin the difficult journey, we've already begun it, of course, to a better and more viable economy and society. Repair so much damage that had been made. I see this revolution of the self-evident having as its basic goal to create trust and regain our lost credibility. Create the trust we need in our institutions, our capabilities, our own selves. Regain the credibility we lost amongst our partners, our investors, the credibility our citizens want to see in government institutions. So tonight I would like to make 5 points, 5 comments. First of all, where were we a year ago? Secondly, why were we in the situation we were in at the time? Thirdly, where are we today? And what have we done to get here? Fourthly, where do we need to go? And finally, how are we going to do this? Where were we last year? Well, we all know. Huge deficit, a huge debt, huge deficit in current accounts, lack of competitiveness, but most of all, the biggest deficit of all, a lack of credibility. Why were we in this condition? The second point. Greece has had and has great potential. Let me quote what I said a year ago in a speech to bankers in Vienna. I said, the Greek economy is no poor economy. It was a mismanaged one. And if I translate that to the reality on the ground, it meant a political system built on clientelism, patronage, inequality, and injustice. Captive to special interest groups with special privileges, with it a huge, over-centralized, inefficient, and bureaucratic state lacking transparency, meritocracy, and accountability. This in turn allowed for growing graft, which not only undermined public trust, it hindered entrepreneurship, but also wasted taxpayers' money and investors' time and patience. Huge costs are accrued, for example, in the hospitals because of corruption and lack of transparency in their management. And a welfare system where 40% of all total health and education expenditures are paid out of personal income of Greeks, not public monies. This created a culture of tolerance towards tax evasion and in no way helped foster civic responsibility. That is what I said a year ago. So we knew and we know our problems. And I'm happy that both the European Union and the IMF are coming to an understanding of the deeper challenges we have, where our deficit and our debt, yes, are a major burden, but they happen to be symptoms, not the cause. We obviously have to deal with the symptoms, as they can be grave enough to create havoc. But even if today, if there were a magic wand that made these grave symptoms of deficit and debt disappear into thin air, we would still be up to a huge challenge. One of making structural changes, changing practices, even attitudes, changing our public, civil service and sector, making our economy both viable and competitive, moving into green and sustainable economy, investing in our comparative advantages. Otherwise, in only a short time, we again would be in deep waters with new deficits, with new debts. Yes, we knew, if not exactly in statistics, but we knew and we know our problems. And certainly, we are not going to tolerate hiding them, because this was a cardinal sin. And we are more self-critical than anyone outside Greece, because we know we need to change, because we want to change. We in Greece, our government, myself, we are committed to live up to our responsibilities. And we are doing so in the best of ways. Yet we all know that this problem is not only a Greek problem. And this I have said way before Ireland or Portugal became recipients of help and decided to implement a robust program for change. We have all lived through the roller coaster experience, the sense of terror during the 2008 Wall Street collapse. Nervousness, worry of what may be around the corner tomorrow, fear, panic, even hysteria. And much debate worldwide. How we regulate the financial sector, the causes of the fallout in 2008. Who is picking up the check? What are the rating agencies doing? How do we create sustainable growth? We share a common challenge. We, humanity, all of us have unleashed or created amazing capabilities, be it in finance, energy, nuclear energy, bio and nanotechnology, communications, informatics, astounding innovation, research, and human knowledge. Yet our institutions, we, seem ill-prepared to use our huge capabilities wisely or to deal with this rapid global transformation. Ancient Greeks would have called this problem one of hubris, ivris. But beyond theory, in practice, this means that one way or another, our citizens want us to restore confidence in their lives, a sense of security, real transparency, with a clear common plan, guaranteeing all real participation, a worthy job, a good education, a respectable pension, and a respected voice in decision-making, as we deal with this very complex globalizing society. So this will be and is a national, a regional, and a global governance challenge for us all. We have linked our fates so closely together so that, for example, when ECOFIN, our European Committee of Finance, with the ECB and the EU Commission decided last year on the 750 billion support package, it did so at 2 o'clock Sunday morning in order to send a positive message to the markets in Japan, just as they were opening up the next day on Monday. This is only one example of the complexity we are facing. One that makes our work even more challenging in Europe, which is not necessarily equipped to deal with similar situations. Although we have seen amazing steps, maybe slower than the way the markets react, in creating new institutions which have helped in supporting Greece, Ireland, Portugal, the Eurozone in this difficult situation. And we appreciate this very much. So we are in this boat together, a monetary union without, however, a coordinated fiscal or economic policy, one thing we're trying to fix. We're in this boat together, and I often read The Economist rightly making this point, particularly concerning Europe. Just some of the titles of the past weeks bear this out. How dithering, I'm reading some of the titles, How Dithering Could Wreck the Eurozone, Decision Time, Politics Raise the Cost of Eurozone Solution, Dogmatists Raise the Cost of Eurozone Crisis. So as we in Greece are shoring up the lack of trust in our institutions, deep down our institutions are in one way or another facing a deficit of trust worldwide and in Europe. The third point, where are we today and what have we done to get here? Well, let me take you back to our independent statistics agency. A few days ago, the Greek Statistics Authority announced that in the first quarter of 2011, Greece's GDP grew 0.08% on a quarterly basis. On an annual basis, the economy contracted by 4.8% in the first quarter of 2011 compared to 7.4% in the previous quarter. On Friday, the European Commission predicted that Greece will return to positive growth rates in 2012. Exports are growing fast, 35% average growth in exports per month during both the fourth quarter of the 2010 and the first quarter of 2011. Competitiveness is improving. Current account deficit reduced from 14% in 2009 to 11.8% in 2010. Tourism and shipping, two cornerstones of the Greek economy, have posted strong growth this year. Despite higher inflation in other European Union countries and high oil prices, we are seeing inflation in Greece being reduced slowly but surely. As a Greek commercial state, was this by luck or chance? I don't think so. These are encouraging signs that the country is emerging from recession. It is an important glimmer of hope. And we see this because we have made a colossal effort in the past months and year. Bear with me as I mention some of the goals we have achieved. The largest annual deficit reduction ever by a Eurozone economy. Government deficit reduced by 5% of GDP in 2010. Cyclically adjusted primary deficit reduced by 7.2% in 2010, from 9.8% to 2.6%. Primary expenditures reduced as a percentage of GDP from 47.6% in 2009 to 44.0% in 2010. Total revenues increased as a percentage of GDP from 37.3% in 2009 to 39.1% in 2010, which is the second largest increase in the European Union. Concerning expenditure cuts and tax measures, we have the reduction of public sector fixed-term contracts by 38%, or 29,500 people in 2010. Total public sector employment significantly cut, net reduction of 82,400 people in 2010, or 10% decline of the total. State-owned enterprises, reduction in deficits by 20% in 2010, additional reduction of 35% in the first quarter of 2011. In education, we have 1,976 schools merged with a net reduction of 2,000 teaching positions, and we hope we will offer better education in those schools that have merged. Social spending from a revamped pension system, overall reduction of 3.4 billion euros, or 1.5% of GDP, on pensions, illness and pharmaceutical benefits in 2010. Although deficit reduction is essential to put our economy back on sound footing, cuts alone are not enough. Our goal is to drastically change the way both the state and the economy operate in Greece. In spite of fierce opposition, conservative reactionary forces who resist change at all costs, we have implemented a broad program of structural reforms. Let me share some of the major reforms carried out in the past year. Pension reform, making it a viable system for the next generation. Completed ahead of schedule. Measures reduced the actuarial deficit to 2060 by 10% of GDP. Independent Statistical Authority, as I mentioned, President and the majority of the board members appointed by a 4/5 majority of Parliament, and full validation of data by Eurostat. Strengthening fiscal management, creation of a medium-term fiscal framework with a parliamentary budget office which controls expenditure monitoring mechanisms and binding expenditure ceilings in ministries. Tax reform, new management information systems, alternative tax dispute resolution mechanism legislated, shortened judicial procedures for tax evasion cases. Combating tax evasion, imposed fines of 3.4 billion euros in 2010, which is an increase of 182% compared to 2009. Six-fold increase in audits on self-employed professionals, enforced penalties for undeclared assets, 555 yachts seized, 10 million euros in fines for offshore real estate assets in 2010, preparation of 3-year anti-tax evasion plan. Local administration reform. Municipalities reduced from 1,034 to 325. Local authority entities reduced by 4,000 from 6,000. Decrease in elected officials from 30,000 to 16,000. 30,000 work positions abolished in prefectures. Fixed-term contracts reduced by 50%. Health expenditures, average expenditure reduced by 30% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2011, despite the increase in patients. 10 hospitals are being merged, with more mergers planned in 2011. Online publication of all government spending, transparency. Simplification of new business startups. A company can now be set up in 1 day instead of 19 days. Fast-track process for large-scale investment. Abolition of cabotage restrictions in order to boost cruise tourism, one of Greece's greatest assets. Liberalization of road haulage or truck driver professions. Unlimited licenses with fees gradually declining to zero between January 2011 and June 2012. Liberalization of closed professions. The new law is effective July 1st, 2011 and covers over 150 professions. With this new law, all restrictions automatically are lifted. The default is open professions. A presidential decree is required only if some restrictions are to be kept and only if a reason of public interest can be proven. Restructuring of the National Railway and urban transport, 150 million euro savings in 2010, 400 million euro savings projected in 2011. We have established a meritocratic system of recruitment for the public sector, enforcing performance-based monitoring and tougher penalties on civil servants who abuse their position. We have succeeded in delivering all these reforms in a remarkably short space of time and under incredibly challenging economic and political circumstances. When people tell me that they are impatient for change to happen faster, I ask them to reflect on where we were 10 years ago, 5 years maybe, or even 1 year ago. Remember, no other Greek government has managed to push through so many reforms so fast, and certainly not while contending with such a complex global crisis at the same time. But don't get me wrong, we still have a long way to go. But there is also much to be optimistic about. These things haven't just happened. Every single Greek has played his or her part, making huge sacrifices in this past year. And I know this is not easy, but our resolve is unwavering, and we will persevere. Our immediate priority is to ensure that Greece has a primary surplus, and I will do whatever it takes to achieve that. This will be a clear sign that we are on the road to deal with our debt. What we have introduced is a completely different kind of politics, making a clean break with past practices, changing the way the state functions, setting an example for our citizens and other political parties by taking a long, hard look in the mirror, acknowledging past mistakes, and facing up to our responsibilities. In the past 19 months, we have established a new political discourse based on transparency and honesty, even when that means telling people things they don't want to hear. The era of sweeping uncomfortable truths under the carpet is over. And our goal is to guarantee that Greece is no longer dependent on creditors, even if they are our allies, partners, and friends, to indeed be able to stand on our own 2 feet. My fourth point, where we need to go. In order to restore sustainable economic growth, deficit reduction remains our priority, both through cutting waste, but also promoting sustainable growth. That's why we have just tabled an ambitious midterm fiscal adjustment program for 2012 to 2015. It includes extensive privatizations, economies of scale in the public sector, minimizing waste in public spending, and restructuring our production model. We will undertake any additional policy measures necessary to ensure that we meet our original fiscal targets we set in 2011. What is needed to be done from here on? First of all, as I said, a robust 4-year program which guarantees that we are moving, implementing policies, and all necessary major changes in our society. This is called technically a midterm program, but it is nothing less than a small revolution. One of restructuring our institutions, our society, our economy, one that moves from austerity to structural changes, programs to fight unemployment, to make and ensure competitiveness and growth, certainly green and quality growth. Secondly, in this package, we need a clear commitment for the necessary support of this program from our institutional partners. And finally, we manage our debt. More specifically, we are finalizing our medium-term program, Fiscal Strategy, and this is the first time Greece undertakes such a project. And this will bring our deficit below 3% in 2014 and around 1% of GDP in 2015. This will allow us to create a primary surplus above 5% from 2014 onwards, which will reduce the debt to GDP ratio and make the Greek debt sustainable. Our medium-term fiscal strategy will be fully quantified and all the necessary measures will be completely specified. On the expenditure side, they will include a reduction in public sector employment of 150,000 people over this period, or 20% reduction of total. which will be achieved mainly through not replacing people who retire, but also through voluntary redundancies where necessary. A new wage grid for the public sector, which is more in line with that of the private sector, fairer, rewarding effort and productivity, and containing wage costs. Merging or closing down state entities that no longer serve their purpose. Streamlining, means testing, and targeting social benefits to those most vulnerable. An unrelenting effort to cut waste and reform all of the public administration. On the revenue side, a re-evaluation of tax exemptions with a view to keep only those that are socially needed or can be justified for growth and competitiveness in areas where we have comparative advantage. We've done this in the tourist industry, for example. A full-fledged attack on tax evasion, which is an impediment to growth and one of the main causes of social inequality, creating a strong sense of lack of fairness. Certainly we would want a lower tax rate for business, but this we can achieve as we see greater transparency and as we see that we are truly fighting tax evasion. At the same time, we will announce and push forward our next steps in our ambitious privatization and asset management strategy. We have aimed for a target of 50 billion euro in revenues, which can cut public debt to up to 20 percentage points. Equally important, however, we will use privatizations to reinvigorate critical sectors of our economy and boost growth. We will front-load this process by announcing the reduction or elimination of the stake which the state owns in listed companies in telecoms, ports, water management, as well as electricity and gaming, bringing forward in time transactions that are mature and will signal the direction which we are taking. A word on debt restructuring. I know that analysts are talking about it, and many have already discounted it. But we, the Greek government, European institutions, and other Eurozone countries all continue to believe that the costs far outweigh any potential benefits. For our citizens, for the economy, for the Greek and European banking system, for social security funds, for the Eurozone. So we stick to doing what we need to do in any case, create a primary surplus, get the economy growing, again through structural reforms, and use our assets to reduce our debt. All other discussions seem to be a distraction, and we refuse to be drawn into them. In the long term, our policies are designed to lay the foundations for a much more dynamic, viable, and competitive economy. An economy based on innovation, green growth, and high-quality products and services. Finally, how are we going to do this? First of all, no one should doubt our commitment and resolve. Don't interpret any difficulties as faltering. We may need time for deliberations. We may need to tweak or even change some of our initial assumptions. We may need to further help and empower a public administration that had never before been asked to perform with such speed, such innovation, such a different approach and attitude. That in no way changes our will and our decision for major change in our country. Yes, we are changing everything. And we are doing so during a period of great international turbulence. The global financial market continuing to be volatile. Just imagine how it would be in your country if, as you are making a small revolution, analysts around the world, experts, or many who recently seem to have become experts on Greece, pontificate and predict the doomsday just around the corner. This is not the most conducive of atmospheres for change, for investment, for confidence, or for hope. From the international media, we ask no more than respect for what we are doing. No accolades, but no trashing. Because again, yes, we are changing everything. First of all, because we came in on a mandate for change. Secondly, we owe it to ourselves. We know down deep, even when we don't see much light at the end of the tunnel, that our people and our land has great potential. Our own tradition has taught us from ancient times that what it means to decide to take a voyage such as one to Ithaca. We know there are perils on the way, cyclops and sirens, black swans, yet we know we will learn and become better through this very trying journey. We are creating a much healthier relationship between the public and the private sector, changing our education system, our social welfare system, our healthcare system to make it more efficient and effective and serve our people better, give prospects to the younger generation. In the long term, our policies are designed to lay the foundations for a dynamic economy. How will we do this? Final point. Beyond our commitment, our resolve, our political will, we have our partnerships. And let me say a few words, a short few words in Greek, because one of the partnerships is the ones we create in our own society, within Greece itself. Πρώτη ανάγκη είναι μιας νέας εθνικής συνεννόησης εντός της χώρας μας. Γιατί η εμπειρία των τελευταίων ετών, οι σκληρές αλήθειες για την κατάστασή μας, δεν επιτρέπουν εξοραϊσμούς, ούτε και μαγικές συνταγές. Απαιτούν σοβαρότητα, υπευθυνότητα, επιμονή και αφοσίωση από όλους μας. Και αυτό πρέπει να εκφραστεί από όλους, την κοινωνία, τους επιχειρηματίες, τους κοινωνικούς εταίρους, μέχρι βέβαια και τις πολιτικές ηγεσίες των κομμάτων. Είναι εθνική αναγκαιότητα να αλλάξουμε την Ελλάδα και να δώσουμε το δείγμα της βούλησής μας παντού, ώστε και οι πάντες να το κατανοούν. Again, back in English. Our experience, my personal experience over the past year, has only strengthened my belief in the need for deeper cooperation in the European Union and internationally. We face a common challenge to strengthen the trust needed between us, to strengthen the trust in what we have already achieved, and it is much, be it the euro, be it our democracies, be it social cohesion, or be it peace on our continent. Very simply, our challenge is to develop more partnerships, greater understanding of our respective or common problems, and deeper integration and cooperation. In our democracies and our economies, with and between our peoples, we need this cooperation. The opposite, xenophobic rhetoric, easy scapegoating, nationalistic entropy, all these are recipes for disaster for Europe. So this is a challenge we must, and I believe we can muster and overcome together. Let me add one more point concerning Greece, its international role that makes it unique in Europe. And it only further proves both our need for close cooperation, but also our amazing potential, which I believe we in Europe have not yet realized or even understood. Yes, we have underestimated as Europeans our potential as Europe. Over the past year, most of what one hears concerning Greece is the terrible financial crisis. For all our problems, Greece is and remains a point of important stability in this region, a frontline state of the European Union, bringing its values and stability to a difficult and changing region. We are key to the European prospects and integration of the Balkans into our European family of values. And this is important for stability and peace in the region. Our banks, for example, have heavily invested in the Balkans and are providing both for growth and jobs. We are key in the relation to Turkey and the solution to the Cyprus problem. Our relation with Turkey epitomizes the possibilities as well as the difficulties in the relation between Turkey and the European Union. Greece is neighboring the biggest city of Europe in population, and a very dynamic one economically. Istanbul, or Konstantinoupoli as we call it in Greek. And tourism, trade between our countries is booming, yet only at a fraction of its potential. We are becoming a hub for China and its exports to the European market. Our main port, Piraeus, has been chosen for this purpose, and we, our shipping industry and port authorities, are working systematically towards this goal. We are an honest broker in the Middle East, our neighbors, where our relations with Israel have improved, while we maintain strong traditional relations and friendship with the Arab world and the Palestinians. We are decided to help peace in this region. Part of the contact group, now conducting operations in Libya, we are also taking initiatives to find a peaceful resolution to a conflict we all know has no exclusively military solution. Greece is becoming a hub for energy networks, already from Russia, Azerbaijan through Turkey, and potentially from Israel to the rest of Europe. We also are in advanced stages of providing for important investment in wind, solar, and geothermal renewable energy, becoming fast a front runner in this area also. Then we are all facing the amazing changes in the Arab world. Yes, we in Greece knew that democracy was no Western patent or exclusivity. As a matter of fact, one should not forget, and we Greeks don't forget, the legacy of the Arab and Muslim scholars during the heyday of Arab culture. During the 8th to 10th centuries, there was a massive translation of Greek works from Greek to Arabic by Muslim scholars. Had these translations not been done, there would never have been an enlightenment as we know it in the West. The world would possibly not know of ancient Greek culture. From philosophy to medicine, many texts from ancient Greece do not exist in the original Greek language and only exist in Arabic translation. I only say this to remind all the deep historical and cultural ties in the region, and how the liberation of the Arab people will only mean an awakening, not only of the past, but also a search for a modern identity where democracy is theirs, not a monopoly of the West. The relation of the Arab and Muslim world with Hellenism coincided with the pinnacle of Arab civilization, and the rise of the Arab civilization today will inevitably again revisit the concept of democracy, of its relation to Athens, the birthplace of democracy. This is not only symbolism. I'd like to quote Jeffrey Sachs in one of his op-ed articles recently published. He says, "It is true that Greece will have to sustain tough economic adjustments for many years, and that the national will might falter. But there are certain cards up the country's sleeve. First, Greece's debts are more manageable than they seem, because Greece's hidden economy and hidden wealth of the elites are also much greater than they seem. Money has been salted away for years in hidden bank balances. If that wealth can now be tapped through honest work and tax authorities, the budget will be brighter than it appears possible today. Second, and even more important, is the growing role in the wider world of Greece, the growing role of Greece in the wider world economy. Greece's new rapprochement with Turkey is not only diplomatic, but increasingly economic as well. Two-way trade is on the rise, as are regional infrastructure projects. Greece has also branched out to Bulgaria, North Africa, and other neighbors. With rising demand coming from the Middle East, too, economic recovery could yield pleasant surprises. We are facing many challenges, and certainly democracy is one of them, and we are all in need of this redefining of democracy in the time of social media, rediscovering democracy, its meaning for us in a globalized economy, and this will be crucial for Europe's relations with its Muslim and Arab neighbors. These are not lofty goals compared to the financial challenge we in Greece face today. But I believe we can and we will succeed. First of all, because we owe it to ourselves. But secondly, because we know we have the potential and we know we can. Thank you very much.